We just got in trouble. Too much zigzagging.
Welcome to Her Travel Expert. We're two friends who bonded over a shared love of family and travel.
I'm Kirsten Maxwell from Kids Our Trip and Groups Our Trip.
And I'm Meagan Rifston from MommyTravels.net. Whether you're planning a solo escape, a girls' getaway, or the ultimate family vacation, we're here to help you make every trip unforgettable. Hey y'all, welcome back to an episode of Her Travel Expert. Today we are talking all things Mexico because between Kirsten and I, we have spent an enormous amount of time in Mexico, and I am headed there in 2 days.
Mexico is one of those places that comes up quite a bit in different conversations I have and my website. And so I'm happy to share what we know because, like you said, I can't remember a time I didn't go there.
And so we're both based in Texas, which means it's an easy direct flight. So, I can head to DFW Airport and be down there on the ground 2.5 hours. So it's just quick and easy. And for a lot of the United States, it's a real quick and easy flight. Now, I think no matter like what part of the country you're in, you can get to some part of Mexico super easy.
Agree.
And direct.
And direct. And,
I'm a big fan of direct flights.
Same. I used to have to, if I went to the west coast of Mexico when we lived in Chicago, I always had to change planes somewhere. And so it's nice to just be in Dallas and just grab a flight, get there. Like you said, you leave at breakfast, you're there for lunch. And who doesn't like a buffet Mexican lunch with ceviche and tacos and all the good things? So definitely an easy trip.
So don't you think the number one question is it safe?
Always. So I'll defer to you. You're traveling a lot. I think both of us as single travelers or, with friends and then you travel with family as well. So, everybody's got a different opinion on what they think, but I think you would probably agree with me that it's not an issue. Most people will go, not have any instances, but what everybody hears about are those few unfortunate incidents that do indeed happen. I'm not going to act naive that I didn't know anything happened in Mexico because they certainly do. But there's just safety precautions I think we all need to take before we undertake a trip to Mexico, whether it's solo or with a group of people.
Yeah, I definitely would never tell someone not to go there. I think the only time I ever hesitated was a friend of mine. Her daughter was going on a college trip, and all college students, it's their first time like out of the country. So that is where I'm a little more cautious. So I would just say, you're a tourist for a reason. Do the touristy things. You sign up for the popular day trips to the Mayan ruins or to go ziplining or, pick a reputable company. Like you don't just randomly flag somebody down. And, there are certain countries that, like, say I'm in Italy, I will walk off a cruise ship. There might be a cab driver there and he says, "Oh, for $200, I'll take your family to Portofino." And I'm like, let's go. Not in Mexico. That's not what we're doing in Mexico. In Mexico, we're booking through a reputable company. Any resort you stay at either has somebody they work with or a company that they know. So I don't think you go off the beaten path. I think you don't make too many poor decisions. Look, there's a lot of drinking that goes down, and you got to know when to cut yourself off. And it sneaks up on you when you think about you're outside in the sun and it's super hot, and maybe you're not hydrating. So remember to drink lots of water. Every time you decide to have that cocktail or that shot, drink 8 ounces of water. If you're out there in the heat of the day in the pool, you may not feel like you're overheating or getting too tipsy, but it can hit a lot harder depending on the weather. So it's something to kind of keep in mind. But yeah, I think you just don't go looking to score drugs.
Just speaking of drugs, I think we have only encountered it once. It was walking Playa del Carmen, just down the streets. Somebody approached my husband out there. He wanted to buy some cocaine. He said no. They left us alone. We carried on. But it did kind of make us do that gut check of, oh, we need to pay attention. We're traveling with teenage boys who are impressionable, and you just want to make sure that everybody kind of understands the risk and what's going on. And like you said about the drinking, even with your kids, because they're obviously the drinking age is 18. And many resorts are very good because they give you a band if you're under 21, but that doesn't mean that the kids won't skirt around the issues and try to find their own way to the alcohol. And it's just something to keep in mind is that it's not like the US, like you said from the very beginning. You have to be mindful of the fact that you're in a different country, that they have different laws, that your personal safety comes first. So just always being aware of your surroundings, I think, is super important. It's anywhere you travel, but I think there, just because it's this contained environment and it's party atmosphere at a lot of different properties, you just have to be on your guard a little bit extra than.
Now, I've never been offered anything anywhere in Mexico. So, but I don't think I'm the kind of person you would approach to like for any reason. So, oh, but I do get the jewelry people, the people that walk up and down the beach and they sell the jewelry. I've gotten a ton of jewelry that way, and it's a really good deal in my opinion. So, if it's real silver, it'll be stamped. So you just have to check it, like flip it over and see if it's been stamped, and then you're getting a really good deal. So, I loaded up the last time I was in Puerto Vallarta.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily go to like a shopping mall because I know a lot of people like to shop in Mexico. The only thing I like to get is prescriptions or like Latisse. You can get Latisse for super cheap at Walmart.
My mom always would go to Mexico to get Retin-A because it's cheaper and you can get it direct at the drugstore without a prescription. And the other thing I was going to say, that earlier you touched on drinking the water, and people do have concerns like, can you drink the water there? And my answer is no. It's not super environmentally friendly. So they do have water bottles typically at the hotels, but I always recommend bringing your own water bottle. And sometimes you'll find they have different water dispensers throughout the property that you can fill up throughout the day. But the next thing we were going to talk about was budget, because for everybody that's traveling to Mexico, it's kind of hard to know where to begin. And price point is usually a good place to start, because when you have less, you kind of look at the properties that are going to give you the all-in-one package for a better deal versus having to spend all the money in the world. Maybe you have that, and so you can go to some of the higher end properties. But where do you think is a good place for people to start if they maybe don't have the best budget in the world? Are there certain parts of Mexico you think are lend themselves to being more if
I think any of the destinations that haven't gotten super popular yet are definitely way more affordable. I think Tulum is still pretty affordable. There's a lot of smaller places where you can stay, like kind of boutique hotels where there might be like 8 rooms or something, and you can pick up a really cheap room there. Also, VRBO is really popular throughout the area. So if you don't want to do the all inclusive thing, then even in the resort towns that are more expensive, you can find a cheap VRBO, and it's pretty affordable to eat around the area, regardless of where you're staying. And so,
it's funny as you're saying that, I'm thinking I've never planned on renting a vacation rental in Mexico, just because I think it was a couple of years ago, there was somebody who had like the carbon monoxide detector issue, and they actually passed away in their rental. And so for me, I would do that, but I would make sure that you have some really good conversations with your host. Make sure you know what's included, what you can expect to find, what's in the neighborhood surrounding your lodging. There's just important things to consider. How do you get around? Like, what's transportation like? Are you going to be walking everywhere? I mean, because there are smaller places like Holbox, which is, up north of Cancun, and it's an island, and you get around on golf carts. So, I mean, you could technically go there and just park yourself there. But there are other places where you're going to want to be able to get around. So, do you rent a car? I've never.
yeah, we have. So a lot of the most popular parts of Mexico are so much like America. It's the same driving laws. You're driving on the same side of the road. It's pretty simple to get around out there. I mean, they work on their highway system all the time. So to me, the worst strip used to be Cancun to Tulum because they were doing so much work expanding it or putting in a bridge. The last time I was there, that was all done. I mean, we zipped right down we made it from like the airport down to Tulum in an hour, which I thought was pretty good because it could be upward of 2 depending on traffic. So, but with that said, it's also super cheap to get transportation. So if you just want to get an Uber or a taxi, that's not going to break the bank, even if you're on a budget. So you could probably do it either way. I will say, if you're in like Riviera Nayarit, the resorts are super spread out. You're not going to walk around that area. And if you want to go into Puerto Vallarta, that is a haul. So you would have to have a car at that point or sign up
Right.
for a day trip or something because it is so spread out. So I think a lot of that comes down like if you're in La Paz, you and I were in La Paz a few years ago and we walked almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And we did do a few things out of town and that you had to have transportation for. But when we were in the downtown area, The beach is right there. The restaurants are all right there. All the bars are right there. I think there was a museum there. I mean, everything was right there.
Yeah, very walkable. Yeah, and I think that also lends itself to being a little bit more cost effective is places like La Paz, where the dollar for currency hasn't caught on as much as it has in the big resort towns. So La Paz was mostly pesos everywhere. And it's the first place in Mexico I've been to that I felt they were almost stepped back in time, and they were very, very reasonable price wise, and you didn't have to worry about that. And I think that finding those destinations, like you're saying, that have not maybe hit the tourist market as hard so far, are probably your best bets for saving some money.
Yeah, I remember the last time I went to Puerto Vallarta, I had been told by a handful of people that it was still super cheap to go there. And honestly, that's just not the case. I mean, everywhere I went had American prices and they took American money.
Let's probably jump into the part that most people were looking forward to hearing about, our favorite resorts for different ages, different trips, properties that we've seen. You want to kick that off?
My youngest child is 17 years old now, which means that at some of the resorts, he is an adult, which means we just did our very first adults all-inclusive vacation. So, because it was 16 and up is considered an adult, and we had the best time. It was Hotel Xcaret Arte, but they have a sister hotel right next door that's just Xcaret, and then that's for families with younger kids. So the huge benefits of staying there was the food is really top notch. I always see these funny things online about like, oh well, it's all you can eat, it's all included, but it's super cheap food and it's cheap alcohol. And that wasn't the case at those resorts at all. Like the food was top notch. That was one of the highlights of staying at that resort. And then it's an art. So there were art experiences included, which for teenagers was super fun. So Eden and I did a pottery class, which I made a junky bowl that looked like trash, and it looked like somebody with no hands made it. But then Eden made a real elaborate dog, and it's like next level. And we had the exact same amount of time to create it. I was like, okay, thanks.
Wow,
I look
nothing
like
like
an idiot, but okay. I'm not crafty. And then what was really neat about that one is because it's not just all inclusive at the property with alcohol and the food, but it included all these adventure parks. They happen to own a handful of adventure parks in Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Riviera Maya, and Tulum. So I think they're up to 8 or 9 parks at this point. So one day we're ziplining, one day we're snorkeling with tropical fish, we're off-roading, we're just doing all this, and we're a really active family. So I like that. So I know there's some slower resorts where you're not like go, 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 but we're kind of, I don't mind having like a day off, but then the next day I got to have something to do or I get antsy. How about you? What's a good one
Well,
you've
I
been
was
to?
going to say, let's go back to Xcaret, because I was going to ask you, what parks did you tour? Because I think that's another thing. People hear that name and we're saying Xcaret, and they have all these different parks, but how do you know which one to choose? So I was going to say, we've done 2 of them. We've done Xelha, XEL-HA, and cenotes, I guess is how you would say it, with an X, but it's the word cenote. So it's all the swimming in the different water holes. And I would say for teenagers, and young adults, which I travel with, those were probably 2 of the better places to do. Cenotes, you went and your driver would take you to different cenotes throughout the region. And there were different, like one was a river, one was in a cave, and then one was cliff diving, one was zip lining. So it was a little bit of everything. And then Shalha is more like a adventure water park. Like they have water slides, and they have river tubing and obstacle courses, and you can feed seals or sea lions. I can't remember which, but just all different kinds of experiences. And they had meals were included too. So it's like an all inclusive park experience, kind of like Disney, but not the same. So what did you,
Mexican Disney.
yeah. It is.
We did Zolha. I know I
Yeah.
say it wrong.
Yeah, that's
And
the
I
one.
thought it was too low key.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, we did the snorkeling, but so we were going through the mangroves and stuff, but we did that at some of the other parks. So I was like,
Okay.
I could have taken her, you know.
Did it
And then we
already.
did do the water slide, that crazy water slide where you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like circle, circle, circle all the way down.
True.
And
Yeah.
apparently, I was on the inside tube and it was slow, but my kids are on the outside and they're like, that was so crazy. I was like, really? I thought it was boring, but
That's funny.
lesson learned, go on the outside for the more adventurous slide.
There you go.
And if you don't like that, go to the inside. So, but we did the Explore Fuego, which you can do explore
Oh,
during the day or you can do it at night. So Explore Fuego starts a little later in the day, but I kind of like that because we've had the day at the resort and then we're going to do dinner at Explore Fuego because again, the food's included, no alcohol, but food's included. And we did off-roading, really, really good off-roading. If you haven't been there in the last couple of years, they expanded the off-roading course and pretty much doubled it. So we were off-roading for a really long time. I wish I had known that ahead of time. I thought, well, we'll go around once and we'll switch drivers. Well, we'd been off-roading for so long. By the time we got done, I was like, I'm done. My back can only take so much.
yeah.
So no, you should switch drivers halfway through, which it can be hard to tell what's halfway through. Maybe 20, 25 minutes in, switch off.
Yeah.
And then they have a water ride that is the most extreme water ride I've ever been on in my entire life. And we are water park people, so that's really saying something. I have never been more terrified. Like, I don't know if I can post a photo somewhere for y'all to see it, but I look like I'm going to die.
And this
And
is the Explore Fuego. Is that where it
yeah,
was?
so Explore used to didn't have this water ride, but it's one of the newest things that they added to the park. They have zip lines too, regular zip lines that you're harnessed into, and then they've got like hammock swings that you can zip line in, which I know Zaha has those zip lines too. Like it's kind of like sitting in a basket. And then the other park we did was Xcaret. And so it gets a little confusing because there's an Xcaret hotel and then there's an Xcaret park. The biggest difference for us going to the Xcaret park is food is not included. So there were a lot of additional charges. So there were like 5 main things included in that park, and then everything else was a little extra. They had a really amazing replica cemetery though. So if you've ever wanted to visit a cool Mexican cemetery, you can do that there. I mean, it's fake, but it looks
Yeah, I don't
perfect
know
and you
who's
can get
might
really
be
good
at the top of
pictures.
my bucket list. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I always wanted to do.
Yeah, that's fair. What other kind of off? I mean, we've done another off resort activity in Cancun, and I can't remember the name of the company, but it was right across from that Hilton. It's now the Hilton Caribe Resort, and it's where you go out in the mangroves. And we did the jet. What do you call that boat?
But it looks like a little speedboat, but they have it. You can only go so fast because they have it. They have something on it that keeps it going over a certain speed. Because I definitely tried to go faster and I could not.
Yeah, yeah, great memories.
You
Yeah,
know
so
what? That's actually the best snorkeling I've ever done
yes,
on that side of Mexico.
yeah,
So
yeah,
although the water is so beautiful, I have not found the snorkeling to be on
yeah.
par with some other destinations with that kind of water.
I would agree.
That particular excursion had a that's I thought
Yeah,
the
it was
snorkeling was
out
really
by the Club Med property over there. I'm not sure where that is, but it was out in those waters off of the Club Med property.
it's
So we,
obviously a popular area.
yeah, and we've done snorkeling in Cozumel. That I would not recommend to anybody. That was not fun. And not clear, and just I don't even know why we did that. And another off resort thing that's a zip lining thing. It's not the Escaret, but it was a different company that had.
We
Yeah,
did Selvatica,
that's the one.
and it has like every kind of zip line you could think of. So it's got the Superman zip line where you lay down, and so you're laying on your stomach, and they send you head first off of it, which is so intimidating. The first time you do it, you're just like, "What am I doing? It's so stupid." I mean, you have a helmet on, and it is safe. Like I will say, ziplining in Honduras, maybe not the best choice. Ziplining in Mexico, it's totally fine. It's going to meet the same regulation I think that the U.S. has because you have
Yeah, yeah.
so much U.S. tourism there. So, but yeah, so they send you head first, and you're just like, "What am I doing?" But it's so much fun, and you're just like, you have your arms out, and you're like soaring, you're like flying. It's a cool experience, and they had really good off roading too. They had Polaris razors, and they had a track that was super fun, and then they included some cenotes too.
Okay. Talk about also, I mean, we've spent so much time talking about Cancun, but I mean, let's not forget Cabo and Puerto Vallarta and everything else over there. So, do you have a favorite property in Puerto Vallarta, whether it's for, a girlfriend trip or kids or whatever? Do you have a favorite property there?
My favorite hotel in the entire world is in Puerto Vallarta, and it is called Hotel Musai. It's adults only, so no kids, but maybe that's why it was so great. I don't know. I'm on the rooftop pool. I'm watching the sunset while a jazz trumpet player is playing smooth jazz behind my head. I'm having tacos and chips and salsa, and I'm just like, what is life? This is a beautiful life. Then when I retire to my room, I go out to my balcony where I could hammock or sit in my hot tub. Like, it was a wonderful experience. So I
Nice.
love Puerto Vallarta. But kid-friendly hotel, I would say. It used to be called Now Amber. I think it's called Dreams Amber now. It's a
Yep, I
really
stayed
beautiful
there. Yeah, yeah,
property. Yeah.
yeah. We stayed there during COVID.
They
So,
had trampolines for the kids. They had a great kids club with a bunch of
oh,
like,
see, yeah, mine were
yeah.
older. So we didn't look at the kids club. So, but yeah, and I thought the location was pretty good, pretty central, but we still had to take a
Yes.
taxi to downtown Puerto Vallarta, which was fine. But because it's not at the time, I didn't think it was super expensive. $10 more or less. I mean, I don't feel like it was super pricey. But we did do a day trip in Puerto Vallarta to, oh my gosh, I wish I had looked this up before we started, but I'll have to put it in the notes. It's an island that you take the boat out to, and it's one of those elaborate, kind of like the Escarret parks, but it had kayaking and paddle boarding, and they did a nighttime show. Your meals were included. They had a spa there. So my husband and I both did massages while the kids were off playing in the teen area. They had zip lines. They had one of those banana boat rides. I mean, it was a perfect full day in the sun, great off resort activity. Cause I'm like you, where I can only be still on a resort property for so long before I'm antsy and need to get out and go see what else is going on. So that would be one other thing.
One thing about like you were saying the cab was only like $10 or whatever. I will say like one of the things I do in Mexico is when I go to the front of the resort, I get the concierge to get the taxi for me and they negotiate the rate. They're gonna get a better rate than me.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's good. Good
and
point.
I had a friend that was like super paranoid. Everywhere we went, she would like take a picture of their license plate
Oh
and
yeah.
then send it to her husband back home in Texas
Is
because
that
she was
me?
like, no, it wasn't you.
It's me. It's me. I'm the friend. I'm the friend who does that.
It
So
was Lindsay.
yeah, I do that. I do that too. That's fair. Fair enough. Uh, okay,
It,
so
if
yeah,
the hotel knows where you are, like they kind of keep tabs of you coming in and out. They know who took you. Like,
that's a good point. That's a good point.
yeah.
Okay, so then let's move on to Cabo. Any favorites there? Any favorite properties, offsite activities?
My favorite thing to do in Cabo is fly in and go to La Paz.
That doesn't count. You don't have a favorite resort in Cabo? I like
I
Thai.
do the Hacienda Encantada.
Yeah,
Is it
Encantada.
Encantada?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Again,
Nice.
trampolines for the kids, kids
Yeah,
club, water park for the kids,
villa
pickleball.
villas you can rent for bigger families.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mini golf. I, so many restaurants, I didn't try them all.
yeah,
Oversized rooms.
yeah.
Kitchen. I had a kitchen in my room.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's a full deal.
And the
Um,
property is so pretty, and they had an adults only area too, so I could dump the kids and go hang out by myself and
One
relax.
thing to mention, I think, about Cabo that comes up a lot is swimmable beaches because, they're infamous for their um, strong undertow that happens off the shore because you don't swim typically on the beaches in Cabo. There are a few properties that have man-made lagoons. I know that Fiesta Americana has one. I know that, what's the other one we stayed at? In
Paradisus.
Paradisus. They have one as well. So,
With that said, though, the day you left, I was still there with some other people, and they would not let us get in the water.
okay. So
So,
it's
but
hit
they
or
had
miss.
lifeguards out there to tell you not to get in. So you look for a green flag. All of Mexico has a flag system. And they'll have a sign somewhere that explains the flag system. And this is worldwide typically, but Mexico is quite good about the flag system. So
That's true.
in my opinion, you don't go to Cabo to get in the water.
That's
The spa, the swimming pools, the food, the atmosphere. Like I took the coolest like educational tequila class at the Hacienda Encantada.
yeah.
Like
That's cool.
There's so many other activities you could do. It didn't matter that you couldn't get in the water there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You got to find those things off property. I did surfing school once. I went to Mike Doyle surfing school in Cabo, took a lesson. That's a fun way. It's so much harder than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
You you
I
don't do
don't
that.
recommend learning to surf in the Baja. So
It
we took a
it was
surf
in a
lesson at Todos
secluded area.
Santos.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd do it there.
My kids are athletes and they could barely do it because the waves, I mean, it's just,
It's brutal. Yeah, and yeah, it's true, it's true, and Todos Santos is a good day trip as well if you want, like, a little artsy community. There's a restaurant up there called Jazamango that's, like, this fantastic farm to table, like, literally the farm is outside the restaurant, and I would recommend stopping there, and then you and I went to I
there,
can't
there's
yeah,
another restaurant in Todos Santos called Dom, Dom,
I don't know.
Dome.
Dome?
It's
Yeah,
beautiful. It's a
yeah.
French restaurant, and at night it's all lit up with all the lights. And during the day, they have a pool you can swim at and have a whole daytime experience too, but
Yeah, and I think
very
there's
unique.
yeah, I think other activities in Cabo, obviously, there's going down, taking the boat ride out to the arch. That's very popular. You
Yes.
can also do different tours that are, uh, what's
I
the
did
word?
the camel riding, which I
Okay, yeah. And I know you can do snorkeling tours or paddle boarding. So, I mean, I think that, again, it comes back to the whole if you're going to go to Mexico, book your tours through a reputable tour company. I think Cabo Adventures is the one I've used most of the time in Cabo. I think they also have a Puerto Vallarta Adventures, and they probably have a Cancun Adventures. If I were a betting person, I'd probably bet on it. Anything else we want to touch on as far as resorts that we love? Like, okay, I mean, you already said Hotel Masai was your favorite all time resort in Mexico. I don't know. I'm
You
trying
know
to
what
think.
though? Hotel Arte might have beaten it
Yeah, you think?
because it had a bunch of rooftop pools. I love a rooftop pool. I love to have that guacamole, enjoy the view,
Yeah,
have an
yeah.
Aperol spritz.
There you go. Perfect afternoon.
Big
Yeah,
fan.
I did like we did a property tour of Fiesta Americana Coral Beach, and I think that's another good way to save money is to go to the properties where the locals stay. Fiesta Americana is a very Mexican chain, and I think that they give a better value almost for the all-inclusive experience without taking away from any of the extras and bells and whistles. They have a gorgeous uh, property that sits right on the ocean. Every room is ocean view, and they're pretty spacious rooms. They have an amazing spa,
Yeah, the spa was
one of
next
the
level.
largest, I think, in the area.
Hydrotherapy.
Yeah, that's the one place where I actually tried a fried grasshopper. But if you put guacamole on it, you didn't taste anything. So it's just one of those properties that I recommend to a lot of people as being very accessible. They have an amazing kids club. Would appeal to all ages. So I think those are good properties to look at if you don't want to pay the higher level because Hotel Escaret and Art Day both come at a higher price tag. So if
A
you're looking,
huge price tag. But it's a trade-off because then you're not paying for excursions. So, you kind of have to like factor in all the cost. I will say one thing that we haven't touched on yet is babies. If you have a baby, I've got two different places I'll recommend. The first one is Grand Velas, just because they have a lot of baby amenities. They can bring you a crib, a baby bath, a bottle warmer, strollers. Like you can show up with your baby and they have everything you need. And then when I was at the breakfast buffet one morning, there was a baby that was just miserable, and one of the workers picked the baby up, walked him around the restaurant, so the family continued on with their meal. And when they were done eating, brought the baby back. I mean, the baby was always within mom and dad's line of sight, but I was just super impressed with the staff. And then the other one I was just at, they just launched a family selection. They call it the family selection. And that was the Grand Palladium in Riviera Maya, and they have a kids club, they had a teens club, but they also had a baby club, and the baby club was for 1 to 3 year olds. Now it was limited; it wasn't like a kids club where you could just drop them and you don't have to see them the rest of the day. It was only for a couple of hours, but in that couple of hours, you could go to the spa or you could hit the
Right.
beach or do whatever it is y'all want to do for a couple of hours and have a little break.
Yeah, and that reminds me that one of the other places I've been that has a great kids club is Finest Playa Mujeres. They have a great kids club. They have suites with swimming pools for families. They have a adults only pool and they have a family friendly pool. But they also share restaurants with two properties that are adults only. One is Beloved and one is Excellent. And I'm not a huge Indian food person, but I went to one of their restaurants there and thought it was hands down stellar. Now, mind you, this was a few years ago, but at the time I thought it was a great offering to be able to stay at a hotel that allows you access to other restaurants within their collective group. So that might be something worth looking into. I think the Moon Palace resorts do that too.
But yeah, the Grand. I've never stayed at Moon Palace, but I stayed at the Grand at Moon Palace. So I had access to all the restaurants, all
Yeah.
the pools, all the beaches. And there was I had Lebanese food that was phenomenal.
Oh,
So,
yum.
and you would just not expect it. I really go to Mexico to eat tacos. I don't really want the other food, but
But sometimes it's like,
sometimes
how many days can you do tacos? I don't know,
every
so
day, all day.
every day. Yeah, that's right. Right answer. That's why we're friends. Because we could do it every day together. Margaritas, tacos, and chips. Yes, please. We're done. Yeah, I mean, anything else you wanted to add? I mean, we could talk about kind of our packing, what we usually bring along, or things that you don't want to forget if you're going to Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a beach well, we've really only talked about the beach. We haven't talked about any inland.
No, that's true.
I don't know about you, but when we go to Mexico, we go to the beach. So we'll have to save Mexico City for a different time. And that's a completely different experience. That's completely different than everything we've just talked about. So with it being sandy, dirty, wet, flip-flops that you can wash off and that will dry quick. So, I'm a year-round flip-flop wearer, so I have some really nice like leather flip-flops with arch support. Those are not my flip-flops for going to the beach and getting dirty. So
Yeah,
instead I have like some plastic cheap ones. So every year Old Navy will have like $2 flip-flops or $5 like super cheap. And they're always like rubber. That's exactly what you want. If you lose one, who cares? If you ruin one, who cares? So,
right.
um,
And I think
and
you
then
were going to talk about your dry bag also.
I do. I love dry bags. I love them so much
Oh my goodness, how many do
that
you
I
have?
have them in 3 different sizes
Oh my
because,
gosh, I love that. Oh,
yeah.
I need that. I
So
need
I use
sizes.
them for a couple of reasons, right? If we do a day trip and we're out on a boat, you don't know where you're going to put your stuff. So that's what the big one's for, because then the whole family can just dump everything in. So, but oftentimes what I use it for every time is, let's say you're checking out late, you still use the pool, so your swimsuits might be wet. So I just throw it in the dry bag, roll it up, and then throw it in my suitcase so nothing else gets wet. And, you know,
Perfect.
yeah. So sometimes I use it to keep things from not getting wet.
And my idea is something that's the opposite. It's to keep you dry, but so this is, well, the same kind of thing. So I use a Turkish towel. So they sell these on Amazon and they're perfect because they're this one's fairly big. I'm not going to show you on camera, but take my word for it. And it dries super quickly, so I can just hang it out over a chair at night and it's dry by the morning. It's the sand comes off of it really easily. And I also, if it's not dirty, I'll use it like as a shawl on the airplane because it gets super cold on some of these planes. And so, especially if you're sunburned and you're coming back, so you might want a little something to keep yourself warm. So I'd recommend one of those Turkish towels. So yeah.
It's a
Anything
great
else?
idea.
Yeah, I try.
You know what we didn't talk about though, like educational.
Oh, do you have something
So
to
if
add?
it, because I know a lot of families, I would say that's a question I get asked a lot is like beyond the adventure stuff, like, is there
Yeah,
anything like a learning opportunity, or
sure.
let's say your kid's skipping school. I let
Yeah,
my kids skip school all the time. I'm the worst.
yeah.
But we'll go do something educational to make it feel like, and Mexico has some interesting opportunities because they do have such well-preserved Mayan ruins. So if you take a tour of those, you'll learn a ton. We actually went to this really neat immersive experience in Cozumel called Pueblo del Maiz,
Okay.
Maiz. And when you get there, you become a Mayan. And so we painted our
Oh,
faces, we made chocolate, we participated in a dance, like we learned about where the gum comes from and then we picked it and chewed it. And so it was like this really it's like burnt in my kids' brains. We played one of the ball games that they played, which was really hard. So I have a video of me
yeah,
just
yeah,
getting
that's good.
madder and madder.
Yeah.
Um, and then you never know when you can find something kind of unexpected. Cozumel has a really good planetarium.
Oh,
And because it's an island and because their light pollution is so
yeah,
it turned out to be an incredible experience, and they've got an amazing telescope, and so
it's really cool. Yeah, we did the Coba ruins when we were in Cancun, and when I say
oh, yeah.
we all signed up for the tour, but then we had an allergic reaction issue with my youngest, so I stayed behind while the other three went. And my husband, I'm kind of glad I didn't go. I don't know if you've hiked any of these pyramids, but there's no railing. It's super steep. The stones are slick. And I'm just thinking, I don't know if I would have really wanted to climb up and down those pyramids, but they had
So
a great tour guide who, to your point, gave them the whole educational background about the development, how it's laid out, and how different things could be found on the property. Same with the ruins in Tulum as well. So
so one of the changes since recent, very recent, is you can no longer climb Koba because it did get so slick,
okay,
and they put out a rope
yeah,
to help people up and down, and then it just got to the point where you couldn't do it anymore. So as far as I know, that is
you
no
can't do it.
more.
Okay, well there you go.
You
So
can go way further out to, is it Elk Balam?
yeah, 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 something like that.
And I
Elk
have climbed those. Those are incredibly steep,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
not as slick, but just so steep, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's culture. It's learning about,
Mhm.
people that came before us, which I think is important. I think we've always put that as one of the priorities with traveling with our kids is that they are getting something educational, and Mexico has plenty of opportunities like you talked about. There's the chocolate, there's the Mayan experience, and a lot of different places will try to incorporate that into what you're learning when you're visiting their property. So I really appreciate that. And the other thing I was going to say is the turtles, the sea turtle release programs and stuff like that. I know they have one, I think, in Cabo, maybe.
They
Nest,
definitely have one in Puerto Vallarta. I learned a lot after participating in one. You're not supposed to touch the turtles, so
right.
they should provide, like, something for you to scoop the turtle up if you're gonna participate and release it. So I got to do it in Sri Lanka,
Yeah, no.
not in Mexico, but it was well worth it, and I know that there's a handful of hotels that have areas roped off to keep them safe, and you can
Right. Yeah.
participate in a program where you release some in the
Yeah.
evenings, and it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, so I think those are all good ideas for families who are traveling there and, want a little bit more from the destination. I think those are all good examples of things they can do.